I just wanted to make sure that my system was working. So anyway, welcome to the new year. Hopefully, like the past couple of days between the 1st and the 31st, you had an opportunity to kind of sit with yourself. Sit with yourself and decide what are the things that you want to change? What are the things that you need in your life? What are the things that you need to release in your life? But more importantly, what are some of the boundaries that you need to set for yourself, right? And I understand that boundaries is not something that comes, setting boundaries isn't something that comes easily to all of us. So today I want to talk to you about how you can go about doing it. Because I know that if you are concerned with your mental self-care, your emotional self-care, you need to set some boundaries. Hey, Shatone, how are you, sweetheart? Thank you for joining me. If you're watching this broadcast, wherever you're watching it, please do share it out with a friend or someone that you know that needs to hear this message. Or maybe you need to do some passive aggressive stuff where you need to set a boundary with a person and you can't really vocalize it, and you want to maybe send this video to them as a hint message. So, this is a perfect time to assess and discard the things that are not serving you in your life. And the things, it could be tools, it could be people. Every quarter, I don't really wait until January 1st to do assessments. I actually do assessments in my business and in my life quarterly at the least, but of late I've been doing it pretty much on a weekly basis just because of all of the demands that I have on my life. I have to make sure that I'm only keeping things and people in my life that are adding positivity to it. My therapist says to me all the time that she loves how I don't have an issue with setting boundaries. And setting boundaries doesn't have to be a negative thing. And that's why I kind of said in this broadcast, let it be the year of setting positive boundaries. There is a positive attribute to you setting boundaries. And that attribute is you just being mentally and emotionally, better. Yes, regular boundary settings, so again, in my business, in my life, I see what works. I see what didn't work. I see what's adding value, what I'm using, what was just a shiny new object. And if it doesn't fit certain criteria, I just let it go. And that's people too. And it's no hard feelings. There are things and people that uh, have a place in your life for a certain amount of time, for a period. And then it's time to just release it. And, you release it with love, and, that's that. So understanding that sometimes it's hard for some people, I want to give you some tools. And when you're setting boundaries for with people, and I'm just looking at my notes here because I want to make sure that I say this to you properly. Um, Sometimes you have to set boundaries with people in order for them to stay in your life, right? So it's easy. Some people you can just release and be like, I'm not going to deal with them. Some people you want to keep in your life, but you can only keep them in your life based off of the boundaries that you set with them, right? And I understand that it can be hard to say no, but if you sit down with yourself and you ask yourself a few questions, whether, they are making you happy or they're making you sad or they're depressing you or stressing you out, then the answer should actually be pretty easy. And then the next action of setting the boundary should be even easier. So, but here's the first point. The first point is that you have to make up your mind that that's what you want to do. You have to make up your mind that that's what you want to do, because no one else can do that for you. It's plain and simple. You have to say to yourself, okay, you know what? I have had enough. I need things to change. And if I need things to change, that means that I need to change it, right? This person or this thing is not benefiting me in the way that I need it to benefit me. But you have to come to that concrete decision. You can't waver on it. You can't be like, oh, you think that that person is going to change and you're waiting for them. It's all up to you. You take the action, you take the next step, you set the boundary for yourself, but you've got to make up your mind and kind of work on that mindset to decide that this is the thing that you want to do. And you set that intention and you fulfill it. Okay. The second point I want to make is if setting boundaries with someone verbally is a challenge for you, then you might want to think about writing it down. Maybe you send them a message, maybe you send them a note, maybe you write them a letter, send it in a card. It just depends on what your style is, what your comfort level is, who the person is. Might be a parent where you have to set a boundary, might be a spouse or a best friend that you have to set a boundary. Maybe it's a child. Maybe it's somebody in your church that you need to set a boundary with. And verbally confronting them or having a verbal conversation is a challenge, but you don't want to really ruffle their feathers and you want to set that boundary with love. Maybe doing it with a card of some sort might be, the tactic that you need to implement. But make sure that if you cannot say it verbally, you're not necessarily putting it off. You're doing the work and you're actually writing it down. And a lot of times when we write things down, you can edit it. You can edit that thought. You can edit what you wrote versus when you're speaking it. And sometimes, I know things come out of my mouth sometimes and I'm like, "Ooh, I shouldn't have said it like that. I didn't mean to say it like that," right? Okay, I'm sorry about that. Someone happens to be calling my phone right now. But if I write it down, I can go back, I can edit it, I can, erase it, choose a different word. So that might be the thing that you need to do, is to actually write it down on a piece of paper. And doing the work, you have to do the work of evaluating that relationship, right? So if you feel compelled to do this, tell them why you need to set the boundary. Tell them why you need to say no, or, how they're making you feel, this thing that they're doing or this thing that you're saying. Because then if you tell them how it's making you feel and it's making you feel some way in a negative way, and, they respect that and, they have a positive response to you, then it makes things easier. Like, okay, great. I've set the boundary. I've shared my feelings with them. They're respecting it and we're going to renew the relationship in this particular way. However, if they come back at you in a negative, they take it back in, a very negative way, that you need to set this boundary for your own mental and emotional self-care, then it makes it a lot easier for you to just be like, okay, you know what? I definitely need to set this boundary, or I need to release them. They've actually answered the question for you if this person needs to, one, be in your life, or two, be in your life in a very restricted way. So writing a note to someone or sending them a message can really help you to decide whether that person definitely needs to be out of your life or you need to set like bigger boundaries with them. And the third point that I want to make to you is, sometimes we say setting boundaries with other people or setting boundaries with things we have in our life. Do you need to set a boundary with yourself? Right? Yes, this is where a little bit of that self-evaluation comes into place, because a lot of times we don't even evaluate ourselves. Do I need to set a boundary on a particular behavior that I have? Maybe an indulgent behavior. Maybe I need to set a boundary on, the types of food or the amount of food that I eat. Maybe I need to set a boundary on, how many people I'm letting into my mental space on a daily basis. Maybe I need to set a boundary. Thank you so much. Maybe I need to set a boundary on, how intimate I am with people. This is for the single people out there and you're dating and you're like, oh, okay. I don't know why that came to my mind. I don't know if someone needs to hear that message, but you might need to set a boundary on your behavior, on what you're doing and the choices that you're making. You might need to set a boundary on your habits. If something that you're doing right now does not have a positive effect on your life, or the lives of others. Hey, sis, how are you? If it's not having a positive effect on your life or the lives of others, then you may need to set a boundary on your behavior. So you remember that saying, check yourself before you wreck yourself? Okay, maybe you're too young, you don't remember it. But anyway, check yourself. You might need to set a personal boundary on what you're doing for your own life or what you're doing with in other people's lives. So here are a few questions that I want you to ask yourself. I want you to ask yourself as you're deciding about where you need to set your boundaries or who you need to set your boundaries with. Does this person, thing, behavior add value or stress to my life? Okay. Do I need to let it, him, her go completely? Or do I need them in my life at all? And then what's the fastest, easiest, non-confrontational, if you don't want to get into, if you're not really, a person who can confront people easily, what's the easiest way for me to release it or them? All right. So ask yourself those three questions, but do the work if you're serious about actually setting the boundary for yourself. And, in short, and to end the broadcast with you, setting boundaries is really important for your mental and emotional self-care. And I've been talking quite a bit to you all about self-care from a holistic perspective. And I think sometimes people are confused about what that means, what that looks like. But it's so many different things that fall within the realm of self-care. But, when you set your boundaries, it could be mental, it could be physical, but it could be mental, it can be emotional, but it also can be physical. And those are just kind of three of the tenets of our self-care in general when we're talking about holistic self-care. So, it takes work on your mindset. It takes work on your behavior. And you've got to be okay with that, right? You've got to be okay with doing the work and changing the mindset if you want to actually set a boundary. But you've got to be honest with yourself, right? Nobody else can do that for you. It takes some self-love. It takes some, it's definitely a holistic self-care. When I talk about it, I talk about it from a holistic perspective, but it takes self-love, and it does take self-analysis, right? You cannot be afraid to look in the mirror. Sometimes I know it's hard. You cannot be afraid to look in the mirror and say that I need to make a change for myself. I need to make a change in my life. A lot of people like to say, oh, I'm going to set a New Year's resolution, but are you intentional about that? Are you really going to do the work to make that change? So, you might need to have that conversation with yourself. And sometimes if you cannot have that conversation, yes, that is what's hard. Looking in the mirror is really hard. Is that what you're saying is hard? Yes, sometimes looking in the mirror is hard and being reflective. But I'm going to tell you, this is why you have to go into the self-care part. It takes you sitting still. It takes you sitting still. It takes you releasing FOMO, which is a fear of missing out on stuff. It takes you, being like staying in your lane and just having tunnel vision so that you can focus on you and you can have those conversations that you need to have with yourself and without all of the chatter of everything and everyone around you. So it's important for you to have those quiet moments to be able to do it. Otherwise, you're never going to do it. And you're going to be, stuck in this place where, you've got this conflict or this, tug of war, whether it's an internal tug of war or it's an external tug of war with, relationships that you're in. But I am happy to have a discussion with you. If that's what you need in your life, if you're really serious about making a change in your life, this year and you want to work on that for the new year. So we can definitely talk about setting up a consultation about that. The link that I want you to go to in order to do that so that you can get on the schedule is bit.ly/caring, CARING, entrepreneur. Don't worry about it if you're not an entrepreneur. I just chose that link. I just named it. But bit.ly/caring entrepreneur if you're really serious about making some changes this year. Okay. Hey, Lucretia. Yes, it is super, super important. So everyone, I'm going to end the broadcast right now, but I definitely want to say, I'm hoping that, your outlook for the year is one that is going to bless your life and that's going to add value to your life, add value to you. Thank you, Chatone, for posting that link. That's going to add value to you in a positive way, and that's going to add value to your family in a positive way. If you want to talk about the stresses and, the mental overwhelm in your life, there are certain steps that you need to take in order to address it, in order to protect yourself. going into the new year. All right. Again, the link is bit.ly/caring entrepreneur. Thank you so much for joining me. I look forward to hearing from you if this is something that you need to work on. But most importantly, I look forward to all of us having a positive and an emotionally, mentally balanced new year. All right, everyone. I'll see you soon.